last week of class, this is always a good time to visit Philosophy Club. You need to take a little break from studying final papers and all of that good stuff. So stop on by. I'll probably try to be there. We'll see. I have my own piles of things to do like grading, but you know, whatever. All right. Ninth assignment is due at the end of the day today. We should cover everything you need for it in today's class, but if you find yourself really stuck on it, we can always check in again on Monday, so don't worry too much. And then the last assignment is due the last day of classes, which is just a week away. Holy crap. This has been kind of a nutty. I can't quite wrap my head around this. All right. And then the other thing, I guess at least as important as Philosophy Club, next week is the pizza party. So definitely stop by for the pizza party. We would like to see you at Arnold Hall. Well, I mean, we'd like to see you somewhere other than Arnold Hall, to be honest, but Arnold Hall is what we've got, so that's where we'd like to see you. Come on by, 4:45. There will be pizza, there will be philosophers. What more do you possibly need? All right. So I'm going to kind of jump right in today to make sure I cover everything we need for the ninth assignment and give us time to kind of go over it a bit. Because I'm going to introduce one more tool for translating sentences from English into PC. And once you have this tool, you should be able to do pretty darn complex translations. The goal is to address several of the questions that have come up now over the last couple of days as we've been doing translation. So, some of you have noticed that all of the sentences that we've been translating so far begin with a quantifier. Every dog chases Ferdinand. Some cat is noisy. I don't know. Stuff like that, right? But, as a matter of fact, in English, quantifiers can occur as a direct object of a verb. And we haven't really talked about how to deal with that yet. Now, you probably could kind of come up with a translation of this just sort of eyeballing it if you kind of think about what we've learned so far. I suspect it wouldn't be that challenging. But what I want to do is introduce a technique that we're then going to generalize to sentences that involve more than one quantifier. So this technique will, I hope, be very useful for more sophisticated translations, like some of the examples on assignment 9, and then there will be examples like these on the exam as well. Okay, so here's the technique. It's really pretty simple in a way. The thought is this: figure out where your quantifiers are, identify the kind of whole phrase. So, right, remember in English, we said quantifiers pair with nouns and then the ship that's modifying those nouns, right? So that's what, in general, we call a quantifier phrase, is the quantifier plus whatever it's linked to. And so once you identify that, move it to the front. And so kind of rewrite your sentence a little bit where you have taken that quantifier phrase and you've pulled it out of the direct object position and moved it all the way to the front of the sentence. Now you want to leave a variable behind in its place to indicate where it came from, and then you need to mark that, right, the X there corresponds to this quantifier phrase. So you get something that looks like this. Does everybody see how if you do this moving that I'm talking about, you end up with something like that? Does that make sense? All right, yeah, you're with me so far. And the advantage is that now we can do this using the techniques we already got. That's the key. With me, Louie? Looking good? Yeah? Carly, do you see what I did there? How I just moved it out front, left that variable behind, kind of marking where it came from. And then, again, you put the X here to indicate, yeah, that's the variable that's marking where it came from. And that'll be particularly important soon, as we'll see. Pause for questions about this. Again, any level, because what we're dealing with is, in a way, seems pretty straightforward, but it's also, there's some interesting stuff going on here that is worth thinking about if you guys have questions. Ethan, that looks like, no? Thought I saw the question bubbling up kind of thing going, but Allie, you're faking me out there. Megan, what's up?
I might be jumping ahead, but I'm just a little confused. If there were to be more than one, like in the same sentence, would you move all of them to the front?
Yeah, good. That's exactly what we're going to do. And as we'll see, that's going to give us some nice results when we turn to that. So that'll be the next exercise. But yeah. Yeah, in this case, we've only got one, so you don't have to worry about it. And in fact, you could even do the same thing if you wanted. With a sentence like this, there's not really much need to, because what do you get? And so it doesn't look all that different, but you could in fact use the same technique for sentences that start with a quantifier. And we will in fact be doing that in just a minute. So yeah, really you can think of yourself as doing this every time. Michael, was that a hand or just, okay, just checking. Any others? That was a good one. Okay. Well then we just, right, we knock this out. How do we do it? We translate the sum first. What does that give us? How do we translate sum? Just the word sum, what does that turn into? Someone knows, I know someone knows. Lewis thinks he knows, yeah?
Backwards E?
Backwards E, that's part of it. What's the other part?
X.
Well, that's good. Yeah, we need a variable, and in this case, we've chosen the variable, so that's good. There's one other part we need for translating sum. What is it? Yeah.
And sign?
We need the and sign. Yeah, right? Remember, the word sum in English really builds in both of these as part of its meaning. And so we do that, then the squirrel bit goes in between, and what's left, Bella chases X, becomes this. Notice we have, and I think Molly, you asked this on Wednesday, right? Are we going to get cases where the X occurs at the end? Was that one of your questions? Yeah. And the answer is yes, in sentences like this where the quantifier phrase is in the direct object of the verb. Okay. All right. All right, so does everybody, I want to kind of give this a moment, right? Because again, once you do the movement, then it's just following the ingredients that we've already got, right? We know how to do that. That translates sum. That's done. Then we translate squirrel. That's done, and now what's left is Bella chases X. So it's, again, once you do the movement, it becomes pretty systematic. Thoughts, questions, observations? Feel all right? Okay. Well, let's try to test this shit out, see how we're doing. There you go. That's the one I want to share. Here it comes. All right. Clickerizing this one as of now. Let's do a few of these. So once again, I was probably watching the Australian Open when I did these questions. No adult who plays tennis beats Roger. Which formula is the best translation here? of us are there today? We have 2, 4, 6. Good, just a few more, I think. Excellent. By my count, that's everybody. So I'm going to say going, and gone. All right, nice. So let's break this one down. How do we do no? What? How do we translate no? Yeah, what's...
the universal qualifier.
Yeah.
And for like the horseshoe and tilde.
Yeah, good. All right, so that's the pattern we're looking for right off the bat, because that's what's required by the translation of no. Okay, and then, Allie, what's the noun phrase that's associated with this quantifier in this sentence?
The noun phrase?
Yeah, what's the bit that the no is kind of linked to?
Adult.
That's part of it, yeah. And what's the rest?
Who plays tennis?
Yeah, exactly, right? Because remember, it's not just so there's got to be a noun, that's right. But the reason we say noun phrase is that it can include stuff that's modifying the noun. And in this case, who plays tennis is right restricting what adults we're talking about. Does that make sense? And so yeah, adult who plays tennis. How do we translate adult who plays tennis? Wants to tackle that one. Nathan, you had your hand up earlier, yeah.
So AX would be adult,
Good.
and then they also have to play tennis, so it'd be a dog, and then PX.
Yeah, X plays tennis. Nice. All right, and now we just have the Beats Roger left. How do we do that one? We just have to make sure we get all the ingredients in place. Alexis, how do we do that one?
Tilde BXR.
Yeah, all right. And our tilde's already built in. EXR. And which option is that? That's option C. I'm like, wait a minute. Option C. Yeah, okay. So C is the correct translation here. Now, there were a couple of others that are kind of tempting. D is tempting. It's got all the right symbols. They're just not quite in the right place, right? And so here you have to think about how the English structure is mapping to the formula. Right? The point of these inner parentheses is to capture adult who plays tennis. And so all of that is between the symbols required by the quantifier no. So that's why it all goes in here. And the dot then is saying, we've got an adult and they play tennis. And that's exactly how Nathan was describing So in these two symbols are switched, right? And then A is another tempting one because you might think that to say no adult plays tennis is just to take the all adults play tennis and put a tilde in front of it, right? But remember that that's not the same thing. And in fact, that ends up saying, what does this one end up saying? Well, it amounts to saying some adult who plays tennis doesn't beat Roger. And that's something we'll see a little bit more as we go. But if you remember, this is something you can start to think about. Remember that when you have this kind of pattern, a tilde and a quantifier, that's equivalent to flipping the quantifier and putting the tilde on the other side. And in fact, this is just a generalization of De Morgan's law. So it's the exact same kind of thing going on as we have in De Morgan's, where you flip a conjunction to a disjunction of negations. It's the exact same logical rule, just now applied to the quantifiers. So if you can actually work your way then using your knowledge of replacement rules, if you flip these and turn this into the backwards E, you can start pushing that negation through and see what you get. And you'll see that you end up with, again, in effect, the claim that some adult who plays tennis is not. Okay, good. Questions about that translation? Does that one make sense? See what we did? And if you break it down, yeah. All right, let's try another. How about this one? Roger plays some fun sport. More. And you have a chance to confer with your neighbors. It feels very quiet. Very aware of my boots. All right, by my count, that's everybody. Oh, there's a little bit of shuffling of answers going, but I'm going to say going, gone. All right, so what's the trick with this one? We have to worry about here. Quinn, what's the trick with this one?
The dot and the horseshoe.
So that's, you gotta watch out for your dots and horseshoes, yep. That's gonna get you. What else do you have to think about? Yeah, Laura Rose.
You have to move the quantifier phrase to the front.
Yeah, right, I packed this quantifier phrase into the direct object. So what do we get if we move the quantifier phrase out front? This is good. Scott, what do we get if we
Could we translate it?
Well, actually, let's do it step by step. So what do we get if we just pull that quantifier phrase out to the front of the sentence? What does it look like?
Some fun sport Roger plays X.
Yeah, some fun sport. And remember, you want to, this doesn't matter so much right now, but it's going to matter a lot more very soon. You want to kind of indicate what variable you left behind. But good. Roger plays X. All right. And now we do our systematic translation. Aiden, how do we do translate sum?
You do the backwards E.
Backwards E.
Very X.
Good.
D dot.
Yeah, and then the dot. Good. Emphasis. All right, that part's done. Fun sport. Somebody give me fun sport. Dante, what do you think?
FX.
All right. FX, what else? That tells us that something's fun.
XX.
Yeah. And then, gosh, we put them together. Nice, yeah. And did I do it? I did it the other order. We'll do it the other order. This doesn't matter. Again, if you do things, if you do a translation with the conjunction in one order and the campus yells at you, don't worry too much about it. All right, and what's left? Roger plays X. I think I'm going to go out on a limb and tackle this one myself. There it is. And so what does that amount to? That amounts to D. All right. Yeah? How's this feeling? Making some sense? Should we try one more just to kind of solidify? Okay, let's do one more. There we go. Oh yeah, I was on a Roger kick. Threw a little trick into this one, didn't I? Yeah, I was a little bit of a meanie here. You gotta be careful. All right, see? But you caught it. That's what I'm liking. Good, just a couple more. Just some shuffling of answers. See, by my count, I'm waiting on just one or two more. I want to give you time, but I also want to make sure we have time to go on to the next topic. So I'm going to cut it off here in another couple of seconds, but I see there's still some good scribbling going on. All right, let's see. Everybody's weighed in, so I'm going to say going trick of this one?
You have capital B RX and capital B XR.
Yeah, the only difference between these two is the order of these two symbols. One of these two is correct. Which one isn't? Yeah, Molly.
Is it B? Because it's Roger B. Stills.
Yeah, right? This is one where the quantifier phrase is the direct object place for the verb, and so when you move it out front, you're going to leave the variable in the very last place, and that's what formula B captures. So this is why the moving technique can help you keep track of that stuff, because if you move it out front, you end up with, you got some stuff, and then Roger beats X, and now we see that the only way to translate that properly is that way. So the moving technique here can help you keep track of where the variables are supposed to go. So that's why I put this one in, to kind of emphasize the importance of the difference, right? This says every adult who plays tennis beats Roger, and that's not what I wanted to say. Certainly not. I would never say such a thing. All right. Some good practice? Any lingering questions on the basis of this practice, or do we feel pretty good about these kinds of examples? So far, so good? Okay. Well, let's kick it up a notch, because one of the things, remember, that motivated us originally to go to PC was that there are sentences in English that have more than one quantifier in them. And that was one of the fundamental problems we identified with Aristotle's theory of categorical propositions, was that they only explained the behavior of sentences with a single quantifier. Okay. Well, the trick here is now going to be pretty obvious given what we've said, because the system is the same as what we just learned, only now you've got more than one quantifier phrase to move. So, breaking it down. Step one, identify the quantifier phrases. All right, just make sure you know which they are. In this case, it's very simple because there's just a single noun. Good, liking this. Give my note takers another minute here. Woodson good?
Oh, yeah.
Scott good?
Yeah.
Let's see, everyone else? Okay. The next step, move them all to the front, leaving variables behind. Here you want to leave different variables behind, right? And so now it really matters that you kind of indicate with the quantifier phrase which variable it is that you left behind when you moved it, right? So in this case, what did I do? I first moved some cat out front, and that left me, right, with some cat Y, every dog chases Y, and then I moved every dog out front of that and left the X behind. What do we think about that? Yeah, we're...
Do you have every, I'm just thinking it's trivia, but do you have every dog in front because, like, if you didn't have the quantifiers, it would be dog chases cat? Like, that's the order of what chases? Like, does every dog X, some cat Y, X chases Y mean the same thing as some cat Y, every dog X, X chases Y?
That's a really good question, and the answer is we're going to get to that in just a moment. They don't mean the same thing at all. This is, in fact, and this is one of the strengths of this technique that we want to kind of get used to using. So the fundamental, another way to put your question is, Did we have to move them in that order?
Right.
Right? And the answer is no. We didn't have to. And we could do it the other way, and what you would get is a different reading or interpretation of the sentence. And that's kind of one of the reasons that I think this technique is useful, because you can really see how these two interpretations are generated. So, good. That's an excellent question. Once you've done the moving, though, then shit's easy, right? Then it's just applying the tools we already have, because now we just knock them out. How do you do every dog? Every dog, and you know you're going to have some shit in here, right? That's pretty good. Then we just keep going. Some cat. Yeah, I know how to do some cat, right? And that comes in after the horseshoe. And then what's left? X chases Y. So let's think about what this says for a minute, because this is related to Laura Rose's question. All right. Here's the universe of dogs and the universe of cats. Okay? What's required for the sentence as we're interpreting it here to be true? Well, what's it saying? It's saying, look, for all x, or for any x, if x is a dog, then there is some y such that y is a cat and x chases y. So for any dog you pick, you can find some cat that it chases. Everybody see that? Like that this, on this picture, assuming the arrow is chasing, right? This is a picture that captures that every dog is chasing some cat around. So far, so good? Okay. Well, let's go back to Laura Rose's question, because she wanted to know, why did we move them in this order? What if we'd done it like this instead? Right? Nothing that I've told you rules that out, and in fact it shouldn't. We want to be able to do that as well. Here, I haven't even changed the variables. I've just moved them in a different order. You think of it this way. In this case, I moved every dog first, and then I moved some cat second, so it was all the way out front. Sound good? Everybody see that? What happens if we do this translation now? Once again, left to right. Some cat, we know how to do that. Every dog, we know how to do that. X chases Y. So far, so good. Okay. Jay, you got a question for me? Sure?
I'm good.
All right. I have a question. Does this formula describe this scenario or not? Laura Rose says,
No, because it's saying there is some cat, meaning one, that every single one of those dogs is chasing.
yeah. All right, here's universe 1. Here's universe 2. Which apparently is smaller. Alright? Here we're saying there's some particular cat you can find that all the dogs are chasing. Right? Because that's what this says. This says there is some cat, and every dog is chasing it. I want to pause for a moment, because this is really fucking cool. Yeah?
Yeah, so cool.
I don't know, I felt like that might have been a little sarcastic.
But now it's so cool.
Remember, think back for a moment. Was that?
No.
Oh. Did you want to pile it on more? Remember when we were talking about Aristotle's categorical propositions? And I gave you a sentence kind of like this. Maybe all dogs chase some cat. And I was like, is it an A proposition or an I proposition? And we were like, well, it could be either one. Maybe it's primarily saying something about all dogs. Maybe it's primarily saying something about some cat or other. In fact, the sentence is what linguists call structurally ambiguous. It can be used to say two logically different things. The same sentence could be interpreted in two different ways. And what we're doing with these two ways of moving the quantifiers out front is showing how to generate the two interpretations of the same sentence. We can now show how to capture the way the same sentence can be read in two different ways, and what the issue is which quantifier you interpret first. That's what it turns on. And so once you start to see this, the ability to identify how quantifiers can interact with one another, how the order of the quantifiers can change the interpretation of the sentence, is actually a pretty powerful tool for successful communication. Because in fact, and you see this even in philosophy, fairly often, right? You can have arguments that are valid if you interpret the quantifiers in one order, but not valid if you interpret them in the other order. And that sometimes gets people into trouble. They assume one when they in fact need the other. And so being able to spot these is going to be a very useful tool in critical reasoning quite generally. All right, let me pause for a minute. I get excited about this, but I want to give you guys a moment for questions. You see what we did? How moving the quantifiers up front allows us to isolate the two different meanings. Yeah, Woodson, what's up?
So in a structurally ambiguous sentence like this, what translation, like what meaning should we be trying to reach? Or is it?
Yeah,
Is it
it's just structurally ambiguous. Yeah, so if I gave you a question like this on an exam or eCampus, I would accept either answer. Or I would say, is this sentence ambiguous? Or I would say, could you get this reading from this sentence? Yeah. Yeah.
So is this kind of like a test for whether a sentence is ambiguous? Like you could try both ways, see if they come out like the same translation or not, and then that's how you figure it out.
That's a good question. Ultimately, the test for whether a sentence is ambiguous is a matter of how you can use it, right? And so, as a matter of fact, if you think just about the English sense for a moment, I think it's plausible, I hope you find it plausible, that you could use that sentence to describe either of these two scenarios, right? And so that in the sense of test that linguists understand, that's the test, right? Just intuitively, can we use the sentence in these logically distinct ways, okay? Now, the question then becomes, can we generate those two readings in a systematic fashion? And that's what this allows us to do. So, it's not so much that the test is, can we generate these readings? The test is, does that match our experience of using the language more than anything else? Does that make sense? It's a good question, and we're getting here, as I say, kind of in some sense deep in the weeds of linguistics more than anything else. What I'm interested in for our purpose is just showing how we can generate the two different readings. It's on at least some theories of language, something like this goes on in your head when you understand a sentence with quantifiers. There's some level of representing the sentence as you're interpreting it, where you do move these quantifier phrases out front. So there's something about this that at least some linguists think captures how we in fact do the processing when we understand language. Now that's not universally shared. I wish Anya was here, he could tell me how wrong I was, but I know that's not universally shared among linguists, but it is not an uncommon view. Okay, let's see. There's one place where we have to be a little careful with this move the quantifiers out front technique. So consider this example. What's funny about this example? Why is it tricky? Can somebody tell me what makes this one kind of funny? Yeah, Ethan, go ahead.
Is it because dog is plural?
That's not the trick with this one. That's just a matter of the grammar of all. All likes itself a plural noun.
I guess this kind of brings up another question that I have.
Okay, good.
So, how come every time you use some, you don't make the word after a plural? Because I feel like using cats would have gotten rid of the ambiguity of the last sentence.
Good, yes, probably, right? So this is an interesting question. Some quantifiers in English grammatically just require a singular noun. Every can only combine the singular nouns, right? If I say every dog's, you're just like, that's not English. Some allows both. And so you can actually, to some extent, encourage one interpretation or another by choosing a singular or a plural noun. And so that's getting into subtleties that our logical tools don't really give us the resources to address. So yeah, for present purposes, I'm largely treating the singular plural distinction as if it didn't really exist. But in fact, it can be pretty important. So that's a really good question. But there's something else about this example that makes it just a little tricky. Yeah, Allie, what is it?
Is it because all and every are your quantifiers and they mean like the same thing? They're both putting these like the upside down A.
So that's something that's important. And so that's a good observation. There's something else specific to this example, though, that's different. Let's see, Jay and then Laura Rose, I think.
Is it that like the all dogs and the bite Ferdinand have to be together, but like every cat is in the middle or something?
That you're on the right track. Yeah, can we say this a little more precisely? Yeah, Laura Rose? What?
It's all dogs that chase every cat, so like there has to be a DX and chase cat.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What is the noun phrase associated with the quantifier all here? It's this whole darn thing, right? So this has to be translated together. That's the trick. So the movement technique is going to work when you've got quantifiers on either side of the main verb, like all dogs chase some cat. But you got to watch out, because sometimes English allows us to do a relative clause like this where we can put a quantifier in the middle. So this would turn into something like the following. Let's see. Right? And it's just as Laura Rose suggested, right? So the all goes to the universal quantifier and the horseshoe. Those are associated with all. And then all of this in the middle is dogs that chase every cat. And if you tried to move every cat out front, you couldn't capture that structure. It would break down. So that's the trick to this one. Now, it only matters a little because, as Ali pointed out, they're both universal quantifiers. And with universal quantifier, if you have more than one universal quantifier, the order doesn't really matter too much. All right. Hot shit. So some of the exercises on the assignment due tonight have multiple quantifiers in them. I don't think any of them are this kind of tricky. I think that they are more straightforward. So the movement techniques that we've learned today should give you an adequate answer. One thing, so if there are multiple choice questions, be careful because I might give you one of the two generated readings and not the other one. Right, so that's all right. That just means there's only one acceptable translation from among the options I give you. But give it a shot. If you have questions, we can check in again on Monday. But we're also going to start on Monday talking about proofs again. I know it's been too long. So don't worry, proofs are coming back. You missed them. Have a good weekend, you guys.